Welcome to the finest Grand Prix circuit in the world. 4.321 glorious miles of it. It's the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. It winds through the hilly Ardennes countryside here in Belgium. That's the good news. Now, the bad news is that I fear it is going to rain. It's totally unpredictable here, the weather. 1 minute it can be bright sunshine. Incidentally, you're looking at Gianni Morbidelli's Minardi car, which has failed on the approach to the grid, and I imagine that Gianni is even now running frantically back to the pit lane to get in the spare car, because his teammate Christian Fittipaldi has failed to qualify. But I was saying, this is quite a magnificent circuit. It is an enormously testing one. Ayrton Senna has won here, won in Belgium 5 times, including the last 4 years here in the Belgian Grand Prix. Now, is Nigel Mansell going to make here in Belgium his 9th Grand Prix win this year? By doing so, he would create an all-time record. He's already run 8 in one season, as of course has Ayrton Senna in the past. Now, in the warm-up this morning, and you're looking at a newcomer, that was Naspetti, the Italian driver who's driving in the second march. There is Bertrand Gachot, who last year drove for the Jordan team, and this year is in the Larousse with the Lamborghini engine. Now, in the warm-up this morning, Nigel Mansell was fastest by 1.1 seconds in the dry. Second fastest, and this is highly significant, was Michael Schumacher, the German, who made his debut into Grand Prix racing here in Belgium last year. He was a sensational 7th on the grid, but was unused to Formula One starting procedures on full tanks and burnt his clutch out and disappeared at the first corner. But since then, of course, he has made a very considerable name for himself. He's currently in 4th position in the World Championship. 2nd, as I said this morning, in warm-up. But even more interesting, and that's Karl Wendlinger, the Austrian driver, talking to Gustav Brunner, who is the team's chief engineer and designer, who is leaving the team this year. Stefano Modena, the Italian in the Jordan Yamaha, as you can see. And there are enormous number of rumours here. Let's get some of them out of the way very quickly. It would appear that Ayrton Senna is almost certain to be taking a sabbatical from Grand Prix racing next year on account of the fact that Prost's exclusion clause in his contract with Williams has ruled Ayrton Senna out, and Prost himself is now certainly driving for Williams. We don't know what's going to be happening to Nigel Mansell. He still hasn't signed a contract for 1993. There's a very strong rumour here that Michael Schumacher will be driving for McLaren next year, would you believe? And I do emphasise that all these statements I'm making now are rumoured statements. Riccardo Patrese would seem to be going from the Williams team to Benetton. Gerhard Berger is certainly going to Ferrari. Johnny Herbert has re-signed for Lotus, and there are big question marks over the Grand Prix futures of Martin Brundle, who's currently with Benetton, Damon Hill, who's with the Brabham team this year, and the Williams tester. Whilst Damon is here, the Brabham cars are not, because they have a major financial problem. And Mark Blundell, who everybody in Britain, I'm sure, is hoping to see in Grand Prix racing this year, and is the McLaren Formula One tester this year, we hope will be in Grand Prix racing in 1993. Now, as ever, here at Spa, that's Ivan Capelli, the Ferrari driver, who will not be driving for Ferrari next year, as Gerhard Berger and Jean Alesi will be. The big question here, as ever in any Grand Prix, is tyres. If the roads stay dry, it would seem that most of the competitors would be on the Goodyear C compound, which is likely to mean that they are going to have to make a pit stop. If the weather is wet, well, anything could happen. And I remind you, those of you who are familiar with the rules, and I'll tell those of you who aren't, that if it is wet and the race has gone more than 75% of the distance, that's 33 laps, because it's a 44-lap race, that's Johnny Herbert. The race would be declared finished at that point. Peter Wright on the right, the Lotus aerodynamicist. So what are the prospects today? Well, obviously, Nigel Mansell is maintaining his form. He's lost none of his motivation. And James has said to us many times in the past, there's Martin Brundle, that once you've won a race, you know you can win more. Once you've become world champion, and that's what Nigel Mansell has been striving for in his 13 years of Formula One racing, you know you can do it again. Nigel was second 3 times. Now he's achieved his life's ambition. What he wants to do now is to go on and win here, or in Italy, or in Portugal, or in Japan, or at the last Grand Prix of the year in Australia, and achieve that record of 9 wins in one season. It's my guess that he'll do that and a lot more. Thierry Boutsen, the Belgian, in his home Grand Prix, as is Eric van der Poel. Boutsen topping up his fluid level because the drivers lose an enormous amount of fluid during a race. Even on a quite chilly day like it is today, there's a very strong breeze blowing. And Gerhard Berger, it is miraculous that the popular Austrian who will be driving for Ferrari next year is in this race, because yesterday he had an absolutely monumental crash after he'd left the La Source hairpin and was plunging down the hill towards the famous Eau Rouge circuit. Alain Prost, next year's Williams driver, with his ex-Ferrari teammate Jean Alesi, who's now going to his car. But I was telling you that Berger, on a streaming wet road, lost control of the McLaren when it aquaplaned on the water, slammed into the barrier on the left, slammed into the barrier on the right, slammed into the barrier on the left again. His car rear burst into flames, and Gerhard calmly undid the safety belt and stepped out. Professor Sid Watkins examined him, as is always done when a driver has a problem of that kind, passed him fit for racing today. The McLaren mechanics used the same chassis, the same carbon fibre tub as the one that Gerhard had crashed in to rebuild a car, and that is Michael Schumacher, who starts 3rd on the grid, 2nd fastest in the warm-up this morning. A dark horse here for his first ever Grand Prix victory, and Schumacher has already this year had 2 second places, 3 third places, 3 fourth places, and he's failed to finish 3 times. There is the 1991 world champion Ayrton Senna, who has lost his crown to Nigel Mansell for 1992, and who told me yesterday that it is true that I will not be driving in Formula One next year, brackets, unless something happens to enable me to drive, because in Formula One things can happen that nobody expected. So Ayrton Senna sitting there, and the umbrella is up because I fear it is probably starting to spit with rain shortly. There is the 1992 world champion, Nigel Mansell. 8 wins already this year, as I said. He tends to make it 9 here today.